certification. Camp Runamuck and Bulleit Frontier Whiskey have teamed up with Stave and Thief Society to bring an American whiskey certification and the chance to earn the title of Executive Bourbon Steward to U50 bar professionals through this virtual certification program. We've curated 3 weeks of education from the teams at Bulleit and Stave and Thief Society, guiding you through an in-depth programming on distillation, maturation, and American whiskey cocktail application. For the last 2 weeks, distillers, brand ambassadors, and educators from Bulleit dove deep to the ins and outs of American whiskey. And I'm so happy to welcome you to the history of American whiskey cocktails and applications in your bar class. This is going to be awesome, everyone. So we hope you enjoy this content as much as we have developing it for you. We'll also discuss the future of whiskey and cocktails and how bartenders can test and implement American whiskey in their cocktail programs. Before we get into it, a few housekeeping things. There are 4 things we'd like all the fans of this content to do. Like us on Facebook. I see some of you out there are tuning in from Facebook. Also, subscribe to our channel on YouTube. We have the last few classes on there, as well as this one's going to be on there. And we will also have other content in the future as well if you'd like to follow along. But follow us on Instagram as well. And please comment and ask questions, especially if you're one of the 50 certification students. Your comments and questions are how we know you're here and mark you present. And this is going to be fairly informal. You know, there's going to be a lot of content out there, but we're always paying attention to those questions. We'd love for you guys to join in so that we can actually answer some of those questions that you have for us. My name's Kyle McHugh. I'm the West Coast brand ambassador for Bulleit. I've been in this position for a little over 8.5 years on Bulleit specifically, but I've been working on Bulleit and the other whiskeys at Diageo for a little over 11 years. I started off as a bartender, very passionate about it, but things like this and being able to actually get involved and do education and all those things are what keep me passionate about it. But I'm going to hand it over to Leilani to talk a little bit about herself as well.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, but not good night just yet. So glad that you all are here. We're really excited to present with you all today and be here with you all. Thank you so much for taking the time. Hopefully you guys are getting a lot out of this. We've definitely prepared a lot for you. My name is Leilani. I am the Southwest ambassador for Bulleit Frontier Whiskey, raised in the hospitality industry, been hanging out with wine, beer, and spirits for the last 19 years. Just can't bring myself to leave. So I will be here for a very long time. Very excited to be here with you all. And we've also got Danny joining us today, as you might have recognized her from your previous classes. So Danny, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So a little bit about me. I've been in the industry for about 22 years. I'm currently a bar manager for the Amsden station, but I'm very excited to be here to talk some cocktails today.
Love it. I love it. So let's go ahead and dive in, everyone. And remember, use that chat. All right. A little bit about the session overview, Leilani.
Yes. So just a little disclaimer. One thing about Kyle and I is that we love to talk. So you'll be able to see, you can tell that from our content, that we love to talk, we love to engage. So don't worry about taking a lot of notes, screenshotting everything. We just really wanted to make you a quick look back reference as well for the information that we're going over. There's a lot more information in our content than we'll probably speak out loud, but we did want to make you a quick little reference. And this is also what Bulleit's all about. You know, we love connecting, we love chatting, we want to connect with you. I know this is a virtual platform, but please participate. You know, toss some of your comments in the chat, your questions, all of that. Good, bad, and different. We're here for it. But yeah, let's get into it. So today we're going to trace American whiskey's role from the earliest saloons to modern whiskey cocktail bars and home entertaining, and how that story can guide the way that we host our guests that we meet at the bar. So if we zoom out and look at American whiskey through the lens of hospitality, just like Danny Myers did in setting the table, whiskey just isn't a spirit. It's a way that we've welcomed people for over 150 years. So by the end of this session, Our goal is simple. We just want to make sure that you feel more confident and inspired to reach for bourbon and rye in your creative cocktails. So throughout our time together this afternoon, we're going to touch on the origins of whiskey in cocktails, early saloon staples, the old fashioned, the Manhattan, why American whiskey matters now and has always mattered, experiencing our current modern renaissance, adapting to trends, current and former, shifting values from status bottles to more experiences, and the relevance in all of today's craft cocktail moments. So I'm not sure if you all know this, but the story of the old fashioned actually starts with the word cocktail. A cocktail is a stimulating liquor composed of spirits of any kind, spirit or sugar, water, and bitters. That was published in 1806 in a response to a question to a New York newspaper called The Balance and Columbian Repository, to a question of, what are cocktails? What are those? And I'm sure you recognize those ingredients. Those are the ingredients that make up the old fashioned. So the Manhattan was also written about later in that same era. And obviously somebody wrote the addition of vermouth was the first move in the blending of cocktails. But ultimately, I think the Martini may hold that title, but the Manhattan did come first, as the story goes. And in tracing that, its roots shows in American whiskey history of it moving from a saloon staple into a little city sophistication. So those whiskey sours also popular amongst sailors and travelers in those days. And that technique was an earlier way to make those strong drinks more refreshing and more approachable.
And if you see here on the screen, you'll see the timeline that Leilani was kind of going through with you, the evolution of cocktails there, so you can kind of get a reference point of when some of these came into being. And then in the top right of the screen, you'll see some shot glasses there with some very extravagant, very bright and vibrant style cocktails that were battling trends around that time, which is, late 70s, 80s, early 90s. You'll probably notice the flaming Dr. Pepper there. I had the opportunity to go to a seminar with David Wondrich where he explained kind of how these came to be and how they were battling the trends in the market at the time that were the not so legal trends that were starting to become on the uprise. So they came out with more extreme names and high octane cocktails in shooter styles so that they could kind of get people back in the bars and not participating in some of those other extracurricular activities. And then at the bottom right of the screen, you'll see kind of a more modern, more crafty, again, going with the trends, going with the folks that are coming to your bar, a little bit more fresh, a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, more crafty. Some would say health conscious. We don't, but we say that they're definitely beautiful. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Leilani to go ahead and talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, also, you guys, some of these shots, I know you guys recognize some of these, so toss in the chat which ones outside of the Flaming Dr. Pepper that Kyle gave away, but which ones do you guys recognize? You see anything that you maybe have made before? Just toss those in the chat.
Or if anybody ordered them.
But so if you walked into a saloon in the 1800s and ordered a cocktail, you probably would have gotten something similar to an old fashioned. Whiskey then was widely produced, easy to source east to west, and it was also relatively inexpensive to make, making it a default spirit in these saloons. And kind of speaking of saloons and their evolution to the bar scene that we see today, that's changed and evolved over time from that informal personality-driven, barkeep that was involved in various community expectations, loyalty, lines of credit, and, heavily involved in local politics, to prohibition. Our whiskey commerce gets disrupted. Speakeasies are starting to come onto the scene. There's bootlegging. We're still trying to stay involved in this whiskey commerce. Illicit cocktail innovations come on, using those techniques to mask poor quality spirits, bringing us to post-prohibition, to the mid-20th century, where the rise of lighter mixed drinks come on the scene. Whiskey still is iconic, but our role has shifted with those pre-mixed drinks and kind of the change in how hospitality starts to look a little bit corporate at this point in time.
And like she said, it always brings to mind, when canned foods came out or microwaves came out, like it kind of goes with culture at the time. It's all adapting to these trends and adapting to what the customers are asking at your bar or hoping to find. And then we want to elevate that by trying to, build on that and create an experience around that.
So next up is the, consolidation of the spirits industry. Some of these bigger brands start to come into play. The pre-mixed drinks are still here. Cocktails become a little bit more simplified. We start to come back to life in the 80s, where there's a renewed interest in classic cocktails, kind of going back to those originals. Pioneers like David Wondrich come on the scene. Craft bartenders start entering the chat. And now the modern cocktail movement, innovation where we're using fresh ingredients, house-made syrups, house-made bitters. There's more attention. There's a lot of attention at technique, and presentation is a big part of this as well. Bar designs have changed. They're more destinations now. We're visiting cities. We're excited to go see that new cool bar. Hospitality has more of an influence now. So this is an exciting point that kind of brings us to present day.
And I love those experiences and all those things with the how bars are starting to become more of an experience when you walk in, or like think of your favorite tiki bar, or I always love like my first time at the aviary when I got to go in there, and it was just an immaculate experience. But also throw in the chat if there's a bar or restaurant that you've been able to travel to that you'd like to shout out, because we always like to hear them, because some of them we actually haven't heard of. What about you, Danny? Is there any places that you've been to that you'd like to let us know about?
Yes, there is a fun and interesting little bar, but they definitely give the mentality that, it's not that serious, but they still do very fun and exciting, fresh things. Yeah, at this bar, it's called Bar Ona in Lexington, Kentucky. If you all ever get to go there, gotta shout out my own city.
Yes.
All right, Leilani, you want to take us through the 14 base cocktails?
Absolutely. So Jerry Thomas's How to Make Cocktails, the original playbook, we'll call it. Whiskey cocktails were at the front and center of a lot of those recipes in that 19th century canon of a book that we still reference today. So in the same way that stories, all follow, stories, movies, books that we're reading all follow, a limited number of narratives. Those are called the 7 basic plots. Guy meets girl, they fall in love, happily ever after. That's, same story kind of goes for cocktails. Those stories, those templates. There are 14 base templates, 14 different narratives that we use when it comes to creating these cocktails. So once you understand those stories, those narratives, you're able to plug in whiskey into those stories and riff with confidence. Whiskey was often the default with how easy it was, and with it being the default in those saloons. Think sours, think those earlier juleps. And the modern renaissance today is a return to those foundations, updating those classic with today's new and improved ingredients, things that we're using today that we didn't think that we could have in cocktails before. And just that renewed appreciation for the craft of bartending as well. That's why you're all here. Whiskey can also stand shoulder to shoulder with gin, rum, tequila in these, base narratives of these cocktails. And the advice that Wondrich gives us in Imbibe is to master those base templates, then play a riff on it so we don't lose that thread, that base cocktail.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite slides too. And also one of the things I enjoyed learning from the beginning is like understanding these 14 base cocktails and seeing how you can, maneuver and change percentages, but mostly just swap out that base spirit. We have the old fashioned Manhattan and whiskey sour highlighted there, obviously, because when in Rome. But one of my favorite things to do with cocktails is to swap those out. And one that I've kind of beaten like beyond all belief because I love using it is the rye tie. It's just taking out the rum, dropping in the rye, and it's got that orgeat in there. We add a little bit of Amaro, but it's got such a great flavor. And some folks think that whiskey can't always be like a summertime refreshing vacation type sipper. And that one, it's unbelievable. What about you, Danny? Is there anything that you like to play around with those cocktails?
I mean, it's Kentucky, so I would be remiss if I didn't say that everybody has their own their own old fashioned. And everybody is very, very proud of their old fashioned. So they believe in it very hardcore around here.
Love that. So, what we're working with, what is American whiskey? That is why we're all here. I know in your previous sessions with us, you've covered what American whiskey is and what that process looks like. So, let's talk about what we do now with those flavor profiles just as a result of that. So, at its simplest, American whiskey is a grain-based distilled in the US and aged in barrels. But what we want to point out in our session with you is the magic is what grain that you lead with. Bourbon is corn forward. There's sweetness, there's roundness in there. Rye is rye forward. So we're thinking spice, we're thinking more structure. Tennessee whiskey is similar to a bourbon with that extra smoothing step. And that influence of the corn versus rye in those spirits, corn tends to give that more caramel, vanilla, that softness, and cocktails it kind of reads as comfort and warmth. Rye brings you that pepper, that herbal spice, dryness, and cocktails that's going to show up as the background with a more pronounced finish. So each of these mash bills kind of gives us a different tool in building that foundation in these cocktails. A practical question that you can ask our guests is, this one is skip those percentages of the mash bill. We're saying things like this one is a little more softer. This is rounder. This one is a little bolder. This is spicier. We're explaining how it's going to feel in their glass, not just what's on that label.
I love that. One of my favorite things to do also is just is like split-based cocktails. Being able to take some of those things and, like we have the High-rye bourbon with Bulleit, but taking that and then mixing it with, our straight rye and just getting a slightly higher rye content, but being able to work with those things, or even our barrel strength to be able to bring up the proof a little bit, but also help your pour cost a little bit. You know what I mean? You still pack a punch with that flavor and things like that.
Yeah, a little split blades never hurt anybody. We love those. So some fun key terms, I'm sure you guys have seen these before, but in application for cocktails, that mash bill, as we know, is the grain recipe that's that makes up that beautiful spirit. We don't necessarily need to break these numbers down for the guests. We just want to know which one's driving that flavor. The wheated bourbon is more smooth. It's gentler for people who want a little bit less spice. That sour mash, it is a process and not a flavor descriptor. So think sourdough starter. Some of that previous batch is used to kickstart fermentation for consistency. Barrel proof, I like to call that the feral bourbon. It is, nothing's added to it. It is as it is. It's no water is added. What you taste is straight from the barrel. It's a great tool because you get a lot more for less. You can tame it with ice. You can dilute it or use the intensity in a stirred cocktail with spirit forward builds. And just like Kyle said, a split base. Those are great. With that Lincoln, the Lincoln County process. So the life of a Tennessee whiskey starts out like a bourbon, but typically goes through that Lincoln County process, which is the scientific term for that charcoal filtration. And if guests are familiar with that, they associate that with smoothness. Bourbon's gentle cousin, as it were. I like to personify things. So our bottle and bond, the OG quality seal. So when you think 1111 or 1111. One distillation season, one distiller, one distillery, 4 years. We'll just say that's where the 4 ones come in. And then bottled at 100 proof. It's a great full flavored expression in spirit forward cocktails that echo, those earlier original recipes, those original 14 recipes, or those original whiskey recipes that we've referenced.
And I'm checking out some of these comments in the chat, and yes, she did say feral bourbon. I love that. I have a group question for everyone. What's your favorite base grain profile to work with in a cocktail?
Toss it in the chat.
Yes. Annie, what's your favorite base grain spirit to work with?
Mine, I love it when somebody comes and tells me that they don't like rye whiskey, because I love a good rye whiskey.
Yes.
I love full flavor. I love full body. I love something that I could drink by myself or just add a little bit of something to it to make it a nice fresh cocktail. But yeah, I like my full packing punch flavor profiles.
Love it. Love it. Same. Me too. Also as well.
Awesome. We're getting some great replies. It seems like rye still a crowd favorite. I love that.
I know. Let's see all these rye fans too.
Well, let's talk about a little bit of that flavor structure.
Yeah. So think of how whiskey is the foundation. Thinking of where we say structure a lot in our presentation, but that whiskey is that foundation of that frame of the house. Whiskey can bring sweetness, spice, bold, softness. Our job is to balance what that whiskey brings. So the drink feels intentional, not something that's overloaded, overflavored, underflavored. Masking any of those beautiful flavors that we would like to highlight. So we choose, how to build that foundation to get that house to highlight each of those flavor descriptors or what we're getting out of that spirit. So every ingredient has a reason to be there, of course, and most importantly, especially the whiskey. Using proof as a creative tool. Higher proof doesn't just mean stronger. It also means there's more flavor density in there. Looking at Jerry Thomas's How to Make Cocktails or even Imbibe, those early cocktails, whiskey cocktails are using those high proof spirits so they can stand up to those sugars, the bitters and dilution. I think that's, I might be biased, but that's why I love Bulleit so much. You can start out with a great cocktail. It sits for a little while, gets a little diluted, but you're still tasting a lot of that strong flavor profile that spirit still has, even after a little dilution, even when you mix, citrus or sugars in there. And then referencing the barrel doesn't just influence the flavor, it also influences the texture of the spirit. So we're getting, some body. We're starting to talk a little bit body here, just like a nice little red, like a Cabernet, those tannins and wood sugars affect how silky or grippy that liquid's going to be on your palate. So this is why whiskey plays so well with a big rock, proper stir. So texture is also a part of that experience. And, how are we delivering that experience to the guest?
And to add to the non-biased, I know we're Bulleit, but one of the, those things that we love, those things that we love so much about Bulleit are, they're tried and true. It's, the proof, being 90 proof, it's like, it's not 80, so it's definitely going to stand up. Some folks would say, oh, higher proof, it might not, what are they compensating for? Things like that. It honestly, you got to hear from Andrew McHugh and he probably dove deep into that, but the balance of everything makes the difference, so that oak and the vanillin from the barrel and the char, the number 4 char, all those things all get put together. And I always reference wine whenever I'm talking to anybody who's not so familiar with whiskey, because you'll find that there's a lot more people familiar with the wine industry or like Pinot Noir and Merlot, whereas you'll get people at your bar saying like, I'll take a whiskey in this. And I'm like, what kind of whiskey? And then they're like, the whiskey. And I'm like, oh, okay. So like I always say, bourbon's like the Pinot Noir, or rye's like a Chianti or a Syrah. It's got more, pepper or boldness to it. And those types of things. But when you get that base structure in your mind, I feel like you're able to handle those spirits and those balances and percentages of cocktails in the end. But you also got to look at the base spirit itself, like it is a cocktail itself, right? Like has been designed for those things. So you're really meshing 2 cocktails together. All right, Leilani, why don't you tell us a little bit about the structure of flavor?
So touching on whiskey kind of palling around with citrus, bitters, vermouth, and amaro. Citrus is going to sharpen those flavors and cut through, the sweetness and fat, giving a little bit more definition. Bitters are going to deepen some of those flavors. Amaro and vermouth lengthen that finish, almost echoing the effect that that barrel has on the liquid. Spice, herbs, gentle bitterness that lengthen that finish. Vermouth likes to kind of wrap around and hug the whiskey with aromatics and just a little bit of sugar to create that harmonious, blend of ingredients like we have in a Manhattan or Boulevardier. Those most endearing cocktails aren't necessarily the most complicated. They are the most intentional, where whiskey shines in today's cocktails. And then, so why does, the taste matter so much? So when we're talking about balance, we're also talking about how those flavors play into these cocktails, into these cool creations that you guys are making with the sweet, sour, bitter, and umami. So once we understand where the whiskey sits with those, we'll know exactly what to do. Add citrus or sour, sugar for sweet, and bitters for complexity. I think that champagne of victory is, seeing how that guest feels about that cold cocktail that you guys just made.
And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the texture of it. I always like to say that, with the taste, you get that sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and the new recently umami or mouthfeel, things like that. But that umami kind of bleeds over into the texture as well, right? Even though it has its chemical compounds that create that mouthfeel, the texture when you get into spice, which this is kind of a good kind of breaking it down for you, like spice equals heat in your mouth, body, weight, astringency, dryness, acidity, brightness, temperature, how all that feels framed together in your mouthfeel. But as you see in the background there's a smoked cocktail. When I was, first learning about this stuff and I was kind of diving, I'm like, oh, well, sweet, sour, salty, bitter. I was like, where's smoky? Where's smoky? Why isn't that? But I now use smoky as kind of a good example because it carries a lot of the taste profiles from that sweet, sour, salty, bitter, umami, and then texture as well. So you'll get dryness from, depending on what wood chips you use. You could carry over some, hickory or cherry or apple wood. You're going to get the thickness of the smoke or I'm losing my mind here. Anyways, it's going to create more of a mouthfeel once it's in there from the smoke that's actually been sitting on it. Or if you leave it smoked for too long, you might get a campfire kind of finish on it. But this is, to me, a great way to try to pick out those descriptors. But if you're thinking of any bold cocktail right now or full body cocktail, we'd love to hear from you in the chat as well on a bold cocktail that kind of pulls from both of those different kinds of structures of the cocktail.
A cocktail be voluptuous or not. Some of those big body cocktails.
Oh, yeah. Awesome. What about you, Danny? Is there a cocktail that I don't see on the screen, but I think I hear you? Is there a cocktail that that you feel is full body that you've been able to serve or have served in the past that kind of pulls from those?
I think I may have caught that. Sorry, I think I'm having technical difficulties today. But a really good full body cocktail for me, I would probably say would be a Negroni. Honestly, I love that full, robust flavor.
Like that. Yeah, so Kyle, will you introduce us to kind of the concept between East Coast and West Coast when it comes to the history of cocktails?
Yeah, this is one of my favorites as well. I was helping put this together, and it reminded me of a conversation that I had with Dale DeGroff when I was first coming up, and he was doing a bitter seminar, and I asked him the question. I was like, I like to fine strain all my cocktails, and it's a personal preference. But I also think that, the guests liked it whenever I was serving it at the bar, and that's their preference or whatnot, but I would try to feel them out and whatnot. But I asked him, I said, why, have you ever thought about, I said, I noticed in New York that they don't really fine strain as much as we do out here on the West Coast. I was like, have you ever thought about fine straining your mojitos or, maybe something with a lot more pulp or things that you muddled? And he looked at me, and I wouldn't say it was a heated conversation, but more passionate. And he said, why on earth would you do that? And I was like, for aesthetics, for and I also don't like mint in my teeth. But at the same time, he responded with, we brought seasonal ingredients, whether it be herbs or fruits and all that stuff. And I feel like you should showcase that in your cocktail. So there's a time and a place, but it also showed me the difference between East Coast mentality and West Coast mentality and the trends and how guests can kind of influence that,
Love that. And so many of our whiskey classics are East Coast stories. The Manhattan from New York, whiskey sour. We've come and the cocktail we've come to know as the old fashioned. So those bars, we have prized availability, balance, and speed. Now in today's modern craft, we're looking at where it's more of a culture as well. We're looking at precision, technique, ice in general, better ice, obviously, thoughtful garnishes, like the mint that Kyle doesn't want in his teeth. The intentional hospitality, as it were, kind of, that service, that experience we're providing.
And that also brings me to another thing that I like to talk about is, when I was learning how to mix my cocktails or shake my cocktails, someone explained to me, the difference between a shaken cocktail, and this usually comes up when people try to shake their Manhattans. I'd love to hear it in chat if they have a guest that actually orders a shaken Manhattan, because usually they have a reason for that. But I always like to compare the two, and I learned this from someone else as well, is a shaken cocktail kind of gives the effect of like a waterfall, a very bright, very in your face. I wouldn't necessarily say bruised all the time. I know the Japanese say that when they shake something hard enough, they leave you a gift at the top, which is those ice chips. Whereas stirred is more of a delicate, a more smooth, a more fine finish to it. And it's going to give you a little bit more of that mouthfeel to it and that viscosity that won't be so overpowered by the dilution or the ice that's in there.
So tell us in the chat, are we shaking or are we stirring our Manhattans? So in today's cocktail landscape, the evolution and the trends, we're moving away from big and boozy to more sessionable formats, lower ABV, highballs, spritzes. Whiskey still fits in here by lightening the build, just not necessarily the flavor. Danny, can you give us a couple examples if we're still using whiskey, something for aiming for, I guess a lighter build in a cocktail? What are some examples that you'd like to share?
For low ABV, but with whiskey?
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh. I actually like to use whiskey almost as like a modifier or cordial. And really just take away just like a full base spirit and just make it just in like that half ounce, 3/4 ounce in there is just like a modifier or cordial. It's got that full body to it. So honestly, the world is our oyster really when it comes to cocktails and trying to play around with them. But it really does have a place with low ABV cocktails as well. And I've done some experimentation with that, even something as little as like a low ABV cocktail, but using it in an atomizer and just spritzing it over there so it gives it a nice good scent and flavor, almost like you would a citrus zest.
Nice.
Nice.
Another thing that we're doing, we're shorter menus with deeper stories. Each cocktail having its own clear identity. I think it's really fun to see these cocktail menus where bartenders are kind of relating. They have their own story behind these beautiful cocktails. We're looking for clarity over complexity. Less, as the saying goes, less is always more. The recipes that have kind of lived through time are the ones with whiskey that's defined and not buried and lost in that cocktail.
And I'm sure we all remember the time, or some of us might, of the 13 ingredient cocktail, when that was popular and everybody was putting all kinds of things, whether it was new, old, in the middle. They were trying to get rid of stuff on the back bar. But yeah, just combining those things and making a more deliverable menu, but as well as, you can put the vanilla and the lavender in your syrup so that you create a one ingredient instead of those 3 ingredients. But now let's go back a little bit and break down the differences between bourbon versus rye in those modern cocktails.
Yes. So I think you may have picked up on this, but if you're like me, I love to personify things. So bourbon is your soft-spoken charmer. Think corn sweetness, rounded edges, shines in a spirit-forward drink that's approachable. Bourbon can be a gateway for guests who don't necessarily, I don't really drink whiskey. It behaves like a vodka. that can play with others and create some more balance. Rye is your bold friend. Think spice. It's got your back. That backbone, drier finish, cuts through the bitters. For there's vermouth, citrus. It plays like a gin, where you want that expression, that aromatic experience, and where you want that spirit to kind of speak up in the build. Which, things we can ask, which sounds like you tonight, a soft sweater, which is be a bourbon, a sharp blazer, which is more like a rye, make it, relatable, intuitive, and fun for them to kind of be part of that experience as well.
Or maybe they'd like something a mix of both, huh? A little combination, like a high-rye bourbon. I think I know there's a company out there that's pretty good high-rye bourbon, right? Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So that is, again, something we love to talk about, high-rye bourbons. I think there's one, starts with a B, ends with an Bulleit that we're thinking about hopefully right now. That happy medium, the high-rye bourbon is that happy medium between bourbon and rye. It's that little sweet spot between corn sweetness and rye spice. It can be shaken, it can be stirred with all that body, all that spice. It makes them greater for smaller back bars. And if you have a batching program, this is your little back pocket silent assassin almost. Hey, got a high-rye bourbons, good for all these good things. Old-fashioned riffs, love those. That added rye adds a little bit more lift, more brightness in a Boulevardier. There's enough spice to stand up to Campari or other bitter liqueurs that we're using without losing that bourbon warmth. Today's modern whiskey sours, you're able to lower the sugar and still have a lot of that character in there.
Yeah, and I think I saw someone in the chat throw in a reverse old fashioned there, so that's a good riff right there. Is there any other riffs that you guys got for some of these? Go ahead and throw that in there. I'm loving to see all these responses. It sounds like everybody showed up.
Loving the chat.
That's awesome.
I saw somebody that mixed, it's like far up there, but I saw Malort and Fernet. Are we calling that body or what? So, how are consumers drinking whiskey today? So, a lot of us are entertaining at home. Something simple, something repeatable. Maybe one bottle that can accomplish it all. Old fashioned today, highball tomorrow, maybe a whiskey sour this weekend. People are also batching cocktails at home as well. If you're teaching a guest a nice, easy 3-ingredient whiskey cocktail that they can repeat at home, show off for their friends, you've won them over long term. In the bars, guests are coming in and they're trusting you with their experience. They want to hear these stories. They're more aware. I think the pandemic, gave people a bit more time to research what they like to drink. They're choosing where they want to drink, and they're choosing what they're drinking as well. So this is where that hospitality with intention is at play. We're listening first, picking the right whiskey for them, basing off of that, one of those 14 base narratives, those seven base plot stories, and just kind of serving that experience up to them. They're ordering fewer drinks, but they're expecting a lot more out of that. They're expecting a story, an experience, a vibe. I'm a big vibe person. There's a cultural shift of more mindful, we're looking for more premium. People are experiencing more. Mindfulness doesn't always mean low ABV. It can also mean drinking with intention. We're celebrating. Guests are proud of knowing these stories as well. What was the first old fashioned? How did they come to be? Just a sense of occasion and history that has kind of told us that American whiskey fits perfectly into these occasions. Danny, what are you seeing today in comparison to what we may have seen 10 years ago, 15 years ago?
Honestly, the development and innovation is very interesting. Everybody has really just kicked the game up so far. It's just undeniable how immersed everybody has gotten with it, and I mean everybody has really taken on the task of having fun with experimentation, which is really great to see. To take something that's a classic and keep riffing on it, and make it fun and exciting, but also not take it too seriously.
Nice.
That.
Yeah. I know there's definitely during COVID, I feel like everybody kind of went back to the drawing board or back to the lab. And I know I did. I started messing around with stuff that I didn't think I had enough time to do on the regular, grind. Whether it was messing around with like, a salad spinner and some cheesecloth to try to clarify some strawberries or something like that. You know what I mean? Like I geeked out a lot, but I think the biggest thing to this that I think of is it's all of you that are shaping the customer and what they're trying at home. And so like showing up to something like this or trying to get certified with Stave and Thief through this Camp Run Amok's program here, it's amazing because you're building your knowledge base and you're building your capabilities and your resume to be able to talk to these folks at the bar and inspire them to want to do what you do. And I think it's amazing always seeing everybody show up, because that's the hardest thing in this industry, is just to get people to show up. And then if you can get them to learn and take that home and actually grow on that, it's even better. So again, thank you all for being here.
Yeah, so talking whiskey, kind of talking whiskey without that intimidation. We're, dropping that jargon, keep the meeting, keep the soul of those spirits, keep those stories alive. They should be inviting. We shouldn't be intimidating. They're not there to get quizzed. They're there for the experience. They're trusting you with that experience. Just like our soft sweater or sharp blazer analogy, or that, Farrell Bourbon, who is she and what does her dad do? We're using these flavors and situational cues to kind of, get that guest interested, kind of relating to them and describing things in a way that they're able to understand that a lot more. Like instead of high-rye mash bill or bottle and bond, we're asking things like, would you like something a little brighter, a little richer, softer, sweeter? We're tailoring that experience and aligning to their taste and their mood, the right whiskey, that right classic structure without them feeling tested or quizzed. Danny, what ways are you, addressing the guests in that way?
Yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head. Giving them verbiage that they will understand. And it's not about dumbing it down. Obviously that's not something you would want to do with your guests, but it's about just making them feel like it's an approachable subject, letting them know that this is an open and honest conversation. You want to build that rapport with them and that honesty, and know that you have their trust so that they can tell you, oh, I like this, I don't like this, this is what I would change about it. But yeah, just kind of making it more of an approachable conversation and just lighthearted, not something that seems so serious and rigid.
Awesome.
Love that.
Yeah, I know whenever, I'm out making cocktails or working with bars and restaurants or at a festival where they're serving cocktails, I feel like a common thing that I hear, and this speaks to the intimidation of whiskey. It's like, oh, I can't do, dark spirits, or I can't do whiskey before noon or things like that. And I feel like it's just like anything else. If you get subtly educated on it, or if you get suggestions, or you build that knowledge base or understanding of it, it makes you understand that you just might not have found the right thing or the right balance or the right thing. You know what I mean? Just to give you that assurance or that confidence to try something like that, All right.
Yeah. So in closing, as you've, throughout our content, whiskey is a tale as old as time. And these cocktails, are a gateway to these guests finding their new favorite whiskey, whether it's through a riff of an old fashioned, a Manhattan, a whiskey sour. Whiskey thrives through intention and creativity. So creating a new story based off those old classics and bringing those experiences to life. Those experiences are meant to be shared, just like our time, outside of the glass.
And yeah, that's huge. Sorry, I just got distracted. I'm reading this chat, and it's
No, I know. Keep trying to not look at that because there's a lot of good stuff in
there. But yeah, so definitely cocktails, whiskey, all a gateway to new discovery. I love creativity. I love passion. So whenever you get to get behind those drawing boards and come up with new things and exciting ways to change or to move with trends or the guests at your bar or the people that you work with, or learn new things, is always an advantage. But I think we're coming to a close here, and I do want to, if there's any questions, please throw them in the chat. If there's something that we didn't touch on, we would love to answer that for you. I do want to mention, we were talking about this when we were kind of coming up with this content. If you haven't checked out David Wondrich's The History of the American Cocktail, it's a comic book. It's like more like a graphic novel. It is unbelievable. That's it right there. He did so much research on this. It is an amazing read. It's visually pleasing, but I didn't want to leave without mentioning that because it's probably been my favorite read so far this year, even though we're still, what is it, February 2nd? But yeah, Danny, was there anything that you wanted to add before we jump off? Oh, I don't think I can hear.
You might not be able to hear you, Kyle.
All right. Well, if you enjoy this class, please hit the like or love button and show some love in the comments. If you want to see more Portland Cocktail Week classes like this one, follow Portland Cocktail Week on Facebook at facebook.com/Can't Run Amok or YouTube at youtube.com/PDXCW. Oh, look at that. It pops up on the screen. I love it.
Technology.
I love it. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Leilani. Thank you, Danny. Thank you, Bulleit. I thank them all the time because I do have a job and I love it. And I love being here with you all. And thank you all for showing up. And thank you for being so active in the chat. This has been an amazing class. We can't say it enough. Keep doing what you're doing. And hopefully we get to see you out there in your cities and your bars and all that good stuff.
Yeah. Any questions for us?
We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Awesome. Yes, please reach out. That's the other
bar shout outs. Yeah, you guys put your bars in the chat. So when we're traveling, we know where to go.
Absolutely. Oh, love True Laurel.
I knew that was you. Robert, I know you're too.
Me and Malort have a very interesting relationship. I will say that.
Yeah, my little home bar, they have a Malort wall. So, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Opal Waterville, Maine. Ooh, Boy Brewhouse, Worth, Texas. Sweet.
I have to throw Jeremy some of these so that he can.
We do have the presentation available that we're going to be able to send to you. Like I said, we really wanted to make a reference. We just asked that. Anna, yes. So we will be able to send that to you guys so you guys can reference that.
And this will also live on YouTube. So if you go to Bulleit's YouTube, you'll also be able to see it there as well. And I believe Camp Run Amok will have it on there as well.
But if you want the deck, we can send that.
Yes.
Ooh, Wild Hawk. Ooh, Kyle, have you been there? Wild Hawk?
Yes, I have. I love it.
Okay, Wild Hawk. Ooh, Close Company ATO.
I used to live in Atlanta for about 7 years, and I had never been there. But when I go back, I am definitely going to check that out. There's some great spots out there.
Sweet.
Right.
I'm just following along in there. Oh, Sinners and Saints in Colorado. Wait, we're in Colorado. I'm in Colorado. Anna Westby. Okay. I should know that one. Oh, in Castle Rock, I have heard of that one. Okay.
Every time I hear Rock, I think of Stephen King novels and shows.
The Animal Sanctuary sounds awesome.
Gotta be,
yeah, happy to see you.
I wish I could see everybody. You know what I mean? That's like,
I know.
I love it. This chat is just so vibrant.
Oh, being the Lady Jane. Legacy Club. I'll be in Vegas in August. Legacy Club. Okay, Javier. Okay, Anna, tell me what nights you're not there, and I'll surprise you. At least you'll know what I look like.
Love that. Do they have any bars in out there that are like like we were talking about experiences, but like Castle Rock, is there anything out there that like touches on some of that Castle Rock culture, I guess? I went to a great Johnny Cash bar in San Jose that was phenomenal called Cash Only. That place,
yeah.
That is one of my favorite places in the US. It is so awesome. And the cocktails are on point.
I know we need like a little
I thank God every day for whiskey.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
All right.
It's fun.
Okay, so we are going to I think we got to wrap it up here, but thank you all for participating. Thank you again so much. Danny, thank you so much. It's always great seeing you and working with you.
Thank you, Danny, so much.
All right. We'll see you guys later, hopefully in person and at your bar. Take care.
Bye everyone.
Bye.